Namaskar and a very good morning to everyone present here. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the 18th Sustainability Summit. The theme of the summit is strengthening global partnerships for sustainability, equitable and inclusive development, keeping environment and people at the core of discussion. It is indeed a great honor and privilege to welcome our chief guest today, Honorable Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad Ji, Member of Parliament, Lok Sabha. Welcome, sir. Please join me in extending a hearty welcome to the chief guest. We would also Bloomberg New Energy Finance and Ms. Seema Arora, Deputy Director General, CII. I would now like to invite Mr. Puri to please present his opening remarks.
Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad Ji, Honorable Member of the Lok Sabha, Mr. John Moore, CEO, BNEF, Ms. Seema Arora, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I have a great pleasure in welcoming you to the 18th Sustainability Summit, the flagship annual event of the CII-ITC Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development. It is indeed a very special privilege for me today to extend a very warm welcome to Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad Ji, Honorable Member of Lok Sabha. So we are very grateful to you for sparing your valuable time and being here with us today. We are indeed very grateful to you, sir. And Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad Ji has donned many hats in public service, and he's had a very dynamic and illustrious career as Minister of Electronics and Information Technology. He spearheaded the very dynamic Digital India movement and was very rightly recognized by the UK-based NGO Apolitical, who judged him as the top 20 leaders in the list of 100 most influential digital government in 2018. We do look forward, sir, to your valuable insights and perspectives on this very important subject. A very warm welcome to Mr. John Moore, CEO of BNEF as well. And of course, I must not forget that this entire summit has been put together by the hard work of Seema and her team. And let me start also by acknowledging and complimenting them for all the hard work they have done in putting the summit together. The theme of the summit, strengthening global partnerships for sustainable, equitable, and inclusive development, is indeed very apt. You see, the global narrative today is largely around three words that are often repeated: polycrisis, permacrisis, uncertainty. And you know, with the geopolitical dynamic, climate emergency, the challenges on food and energy security, the underlying fault lines of social inequity. So the challenges are truly, truly immense. And therefore, it is even more important today for collaboration and for everybody to come together and to create global partnerships to address these underlying fault lines of social inequity and the climate emergency. And especially the climate emergency, as you know, has no boundaries. And we have seen with passage of time, things are getting from bad to worse. The extreme weather events are not only multiplying, they're getting more severe, they're getting more intense. This year itself, new records in temperature were recorded. Parts of Spain had 60 degrees. 61,000 people in Europe lost their lives. India has its own share of challenges. The statistics indicates that out of the first 120 days of this year, 84 had extreme weather events. We have had heat waves, we have floods, we have and consequent landslides, and so many natural disasters have occurred. And along with that, not only us, I think the world is also challenged by this whole issue about food and nutrition security. We are seeing agriculture production being impacted by climate change, and it's most vulnerable to climate change. And it is also leading to a lot of inflation, and the people who suffer the most are those that cannot afford it. It's also becoming a very serious issue. And this issue, is going to become more serious over time, because the estimates suggest that with 10 billion people on this planet by 2050, food production has to go up by 70%. The agri-value chain have the task of not only providing food security, they have an important role now to play with bioenergy itself. Right, so that's a very challenging facet that needs to be dealt with. And it's also important because it's a source of enormous amount of livelihood, particularly in Global South. Similar to the theme of this summit, in fact, the theme of this summit is inspired by the theme of the G20 under India's presidency, Vasudev Kutumbakam, one world, one family, one future. I think that's the spirit with which we need to address all of this, and that's been the inspiration to get the theme for this summit. There is no doubt that, sustainability has moved to the top of the agenda, whether it's governments, whether it's amongst corporates. But honestly, in terms of scale, speed, and the quantum of what has been done, I think it's far from enough. Many countries have pledged net zero. Many enterprises have pledged net zero. For the first time, we've seen a global agreement on biodiversity to really get to a nature-positive situation. But very clearly, all this is not enough. I mean, IPCC has very clearly indicated that in not so distant a future, the world could be crossing 1.5 degrees. And that means multiplication of extreme weather events. And we have seen how much the situation has got worse, moving from 1.1 to 1.2. That's a short-term transition we have seen, and we have seen how bad it has become. Now 1.5, we can well imagine how much more difficult it is going to be. And not only, whilst there a lot of work on decarbonization, I think what is the area that is being less attended to, and it is, to my mind, equally, if not more urgent, is adaptation. Because we all have to learn to live in the hot new world, learn to live in a world with extreme weather events. How is agriculture going to sustain in a world where the weather patterns are going to change? So these are issues that need to be really addressed. So adaptation, therefore, really becomes center stage. And very clearly, moving to a net zero economy certainly requires adoption of a lot of solutions and technologies and pathways that are available today. It's about accelerating that. But there are still areas for which new pathways have to be discovered, particularly in hard-to-abate sectors, even in agriculture. Some solutions need to be discovered. And simultaneously, of course, I think nature-based solutions are extremely important to create resilience in the ecosystem. Nature-based solutions are also important as far as the agri-value chains are concerned. I think that's another area that needs to be worked in. What is very important for a just transition, and that is, I think it's more than a fair demand by the Global South, is the access to the right quantum of resources to be able to do it. That's where this whole role of sustainable finance comes in. An estimate suggests that 2 to 4 trillion is required for the energy transition annually, and about 340 billion is required for adaptation at an annual level. And if you just look at data points of the year 1920, all that was available was 650 billion, very short of the amount required, and adaptation was just 49 billion. So the access to resources is extremely important, particularly in the context of global South. And whilst the finances from the public sources need to increase. I think there is also an opportunity to unlock flow of finances from the private sector. You see, in that particular year, the flow of finances from private sector was 40%. So if the frictions are removed, if the right incentives are in place, if there are technological solutions developed which are more economical and viable, maybe perhaps through public-private partnerships, everybody coming together, I think the flow of private finance itself on the merits of the economic viability of these projects itself will get accelerated. And no doubt, businesses have to play a very important role in addressing the underlying challenges in society. It is, I personally have believed that businesses have both a social and economic purpose, and the social aspect is even more important today. In my view, that any strategies that do not address the underlying societal challenges or are devoid of these actually are very short-sighted and will not last for long. And it is very critical to look at sustainability not as a silo. Sustainability has to be mainstreamed into the enterprise. It has to be the core of business strategy. It is, and if it is looked at from that perspective, it is not merely about just doing some good. It is fundamental to, it can actually create unique sources of competitiveness. It can open up new opportunities and create greater amount of resilience in the enterprise. It is integral to the strategy. And that's the philosophy. And if I was to take our own example in ITC, that's the philosophy which we have embraced this journey 2.5 decades back. And I seek your indulgence in just giving a couple of examples. For example, our hotels are the greenest hotel chain in the world. Our carbon emissions are below the 2030 Paris Climate Agreement, and the world's first 12 LEED certified net zero hotels are ITC hotels. The first 2 net zero water hotels are ITC hotels. And of course, it brings efficiency in our operations, cost efficiency, but more importantly, the discerning traveler today is looking for sustainable solutions for traveling. And this is over time, hopefully, it's going to open up an opportunity. Our investments in the agro and social forestry, over 1 million acres, is not only sequestering carbon and creating livelihoods, but also, for us, it means a renewable and competitive source of fiber. So really, when it's done in the context of the business, it can really make the enterprise more resilient and competitive. And that's the way I believe that this manner in which sustainability has to become integral to business strategies. We are getting all our factories in water-stressed area AWS certified. We have 2 of the firsts already, one in paper and food. And what this does is, it certainly improves the resilience of our factory there. It de-risks it from water per se in future, which is becoming a scarce resource. So there is a business angle to it, and once we mainstream it, the scale and scope of what enterprises can do can multiply enormously. And it is certainly, we are not the only example. There are many companies that are doing a lot of good work. There are many companies that are adopting the philosophy of the three words that are gaining currency these days, ESG. And it is important that becomes, the adoption is accelerated. And to do that, I think it's also important that the noise and the difficulties in being able to do that are also dealt with. We have too many frameworks, too many ratings, no standards, no ways to interpret it. So that really does not act as a great system. And also, so much of these frameworks have been developed with a Western context, do not cognize for what the global South needs, do not cognize for how a small and medium enterprise can be mainstreamed. So we do need a new paradigm. We need a system that is more integrative and inclusive. It cognizes for the realities of different nations, different level of maturity, different size of companies, and it has a graded approach to make the world even better. So I think that's an important facet, and it must move from a system that is merely in capital markets to the mainstream of regulation, so that a lot more people adopt it. And these are some of the areas I hope that will get debated in this summit. This is the 18th summit. It started many years back when sustainability was not such an important currency. It was maybe some people thought that, there is an event and we need a representation there, so somebody attended it. But I'm glad to see that over the years, now people are coming to this summit with a lot more energy and commitment and a lot more desire to go back enriched and go back with some fresh perspectives on various facets. It's really getting mainstreamed, but certainly we have a lot more to do. And this summit is also happening at a very opportune time. Later this week, we are also going to have B20 and the next month G20. And there's been a lot of discussion on the areas of sustainable and inclusive development in the B20 deliberations with the CII theme of responsible, accelerated, innovative, sustainable, and equitable businesses. And many insights have come through those deliberations, and some of it I'm sure will get discussed and debated during this session. Today's summit has got 123 thought leaders from diverse sectors across geographies. And I'm happy that we have 33% lady speakers and 29% international speakers, with around 400 participants and 120 B2B meetings across several sessions. So once again, I take this opportunity to first thank Seema and her team for the great work done in putting this together. And I also like to thank Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad ji for sparing his valuable time and being here with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Puri, for your remarks. May I now invite Mr. John Moore for his thoughts and for his remarks.
Thank you very much, and good morning. And it's great to be here at the 18th Sustainability Summit and to share the stage with such honorable people as Seema, Rajiv, and Sri Ravi Shankar. And we've just heard a little bit about extreme weather. I'm from the north of England. The north of England's famous for, well known for three things. It's the start of the Industrial Revolution in Manchester a few hundred years ago. We've been playing cricket a very long time. We're not that good, but we've been playing it a long time. And it's dark and cold. And but last year, the weather in the northwest of England was over 40 degrees C. My mother still lives there. She couldn't go out. It was so hot. And I think all of us are starting to experience personal stories now about the extreme weather. So I think the message it sends me, and I hope the message it sends everybody, is now is the time to act. So really we've spent a lot of time thinking and talking. Now really is the time to act. And the good news is that globally there is a mandate to act. So now 92% of emissions are covered by some form of commitment to act. So it's either legislated, or there's a government position, or it's under discussion. So 92% of emissions, and that's been rising rapidly over the last 2 or 3 years. So I think the commitment is there. So then the question is, how do we go and act as a leader in a research business? We think a lot about the data and the structures. So I wanted to offer just three or four thoughts about how to act. The first is we clearly need a vision. If you don't have a vision, how do you know which road you're going to take, and how do you make choices? And the good news is the vision. There has been many discussions for many years about different technologies and different choices that people can make. But actually the vision about how to get to net zero is becoming much more commonly understood, and there is a real consensus around it. There's about 15 industries that need to decarbonize, and there's about 10 technologies that you can use. So it is complex, but it's not endlessly complex. And what we know from our modeling is that clean power is going to be the biggest proportion of it. So actually, about 50% by our reckoning, to get to net zero, the benefit will come from clean power. So clean power is sort of 50% of our vision. Another 25% is about electrification. So that's about electric vehicles, heating, cooling, sustainable materials, etc. So that's another quarter. And then the final quarter is in the so-called hard to abate. So it's where we're going to need hydrogen, we're going to need CCS, bioenergy, and some recycling. So I think we're getting some consensus around what the vision is, what the solution is. What we also know is it's going to vary by country. So every country is a variant on a theme. So you can't just take a global average. You have to work out your own country. And those pathways are also going to vary by sector. So each global industry sector will have a different subset of those 10 to choose from. But if you look at this by country and by sector, you can really start to come to a vision. And it feels to me that everywhere on the planet, we need to sit down and come up with our own vision for our own country and our own sector, and really document that, talk about that, so people know the direction we're taking. So that's thing one. If you can't act if you don't have a vision. The second thing is you really need a plan. And so there's lots of discussions around different technologies and things that can be done. And so we thought long and hard about a plan, and we broke it down into 4 steps. We said, look, each plan, everybody's plan should have 4 steps. Step 1, we called it Pillar 1, was to mobilize now the technologies that make economic sense. So there are some things like wind, solar, lithium-ion batteries that just make sense. You don't need to work out the rest of the infrastructure, just those make sense now and need to scale dramatically and rapidly. So that's a sort of act now. There are some technologies we call Pillar 2, and they're not ready. So hydrogen, CCS, those technologies exist, but they're not ready to scale. So they need to be pilot plants and those kinds of things. So it's different kinds of money, different kinds of activity, different kinds of policy. Pillar 3 then is around getting off carbon-intensive industries. So everybody now, we live in a fossil fuel world, and we need to move away from that. And what we need to do, that's where we need to think about looking after, making sure nobody gets left behind in the transition, so that the transition is inclusive, so that people working in fossil fuels become active and work in clean technologies. And then finally, there's Pillar 4. Pillar 4 is about frameworks and standards, and that's where the international community comes in. There's no point in having individually specific standards. We need standards that we can all understand globally, that we can trade with, that we can pass technologies around. So it's putting in place, and a lot of this sort of ESG and those kinds of standards are really, really important, because we need to start measuring things in a common way. So that's sort of how we think about a plan. You may want to divide it differently, but it needs to be broken down into understandable chunks. The third thing then is around stakeholders. And we believe there are 4 lots of stakeholders that all need to be brought along with the vision and the plan. There's companies, of course. We already mentioned companies. Private, public companies are going to be the lifeblood of change, going to be implementing these new technologies, creating these new jobs. But we're also going to need government. Government support is going to be needed. Economics alone won't get us to net zero, so we're going to need government policy to support. And the IRA in the US is now 1 year old, and it's a great example of government policy. $72 billion has been invested in EVs and battery infrastructure in the US since that policy was passed in just 1 year. So it really does demonstrate the power of policy. Then there's finance. So the third stakeholder is finance. We really need financial services. We'll come to it in a minute. We're going to need a lot of money to do this. So we really need finance engaged in the activities that we need to undertake. And finally, civil society. We need If we're really going to change 15 huge industries that are massive employers, we really need society along. It also needs to be affordable. It needs to be inclusive. So we have to have civil society as our fourth stakeholder group. So that's vision, plan, stakeholders. The last area is around financing. So I think it was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of financing going to be needed. Our estimate is $200 trillion to reach net zero between now and mid-century. Last year, there was $1.1 trillion invested in clean technologies, which was up 31% in a year. That's actually pretty amazing, given there was a war in Europe and there was high inflation. To increase investment in clean technologies by 31% globally is pretty amazing. And now that equals fossil fuel investment. So we're really hitting a crossover point. About half of that is on supply, so clean power, etc. The other half is on demand, so electric vehicles, those kinds of things, heating and cooling, so 50-50. And about half of that is in China. So China is 50% of the $1.1 trillion. So if there's one country that's really putting its money where its mouth is, it is China. So there's a big area for improvement for everybody else. The US is 13% of that. Germany is 5% of that. So, a huge ability, let's say, to ramp up investment. We need it to treble. The 1.1 trillion needs to treble to be on track this decade for our net zero. So we're looking at about $4.6 trillion per annum. We've also recently done a report for India to look at India, again, by sector, by country, specifically for India. We have a $12.7 trillion is our number for net zero. And that's about 250 billion, 300 billion right now, of which right now there's 17 billion. So 17 billion versus 250 or 300. So that's the kind of ramp up we need. So again, finance, as you can see, is going to be a huge piece of the jigsaw. So we need a vision, we need a plan, we need those four stakeholders bought in, and we need financing. And hopefully those are things that are all going to get covered in the next couple of days. And last but not least, we need to act. That's the most important thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John, for your remarks. I would now like to invite our chief guest for the summit, Honorable Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad ji, for his inaugural address.
Mr. Sanjeev Puri, Mr. John Moore, Mr. Rajput, Seema, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm greetings to all of you in the typical Indian style, Namaste. And for my friends from abroad, this Namaste has element of sustainability too. What does it mean in simple terms? This is you and this is me. And the coming together means let's not only greet, let's meet and let's endure. That is Namaste. I'm very happy to be here and thanks Sanjeev for the kind words. Sustainability and inclusive development has become the buzzword these days. Let me give a little of Indian perspective. Perhaps it can become a benchmark in this debate. Gandhi ji, Mahatma Gandhi, what he said? There is enough in this world for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. This divide between need and greed is what is sustainable. Saint Kabir Das, a great philosopher of India, what he said. I'll say in what he said and then I'll translate. साईं इतना दीजिए जामे कुटुम समाए, मैं भी भूखा ना रहूं, साधु न भूखा जाए. Lord, give me this, that I can feed my family. And if a poor comes at my door, I can offer him bread too. And what is the larger underpinning of Indian philosophical ethos for the last thousands and thousands of years? One which Sanjeev Puri mentioned, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole world is one. And the second, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya. Let everyone in the world be happy with a feeling of contentment. And these philosophical underpinnings were not developed recently, is a part of our ethos. We need to understand that. And therefore, balance and harmony has been a part of our existence. That is sustainable. And India is a country of multiple faiths, so many gods. But they also attached the element of sacredness to this thought. When Mr. Rajput and Seema had come to invite me, I gave them an example. British learned very fast from India's tradition. But when we became free, we went to the socialist model with disastrous consequences. In India, there has always been an insistence to give great sacred character to oxygen-giving, rain-conserving trees. Banyan tree is sacred. Peepal tree is sacred. Neem tea, medicinal, is sacred. Jamun tree. You go around the Lutyens, Delhi, you'll find most of the trees of this variety. And what happened, I told Seema and Mr. Rajput to see my bungalow in Lutyens. Just so many of these trees. I inquired, they are there since how long? Our bungalows were erected in the year 1925 to 30, and they are there from them. Good luck. What happened? When we became free, we went for the eucalyptus tree. If you take the GT road all the way to Chandigarh, you'll find a lot of them. There is the Russian variety, cold. They conserve rainwater from under the earth. Take it out for its growth. But I talk of harmony. How harmony can be achieved. And this harmony, the biggest example is Ban Devi in the forest of India. A particular part of forest land is dedicated to the deity of the forest, which everyone has to respect. Now let us reflect on Hindu gods and goddesses, how they are living in harmony for the last thousands and thousands of years. Lord Durga on a tiger. Lord Ram with Hanuman, a great incarnation of God, but people call him monkey god. Lord Krishna with the cow. Lord Shankar Mahadev with Nandi, the bull. Lord Vishnu with the serpent, Seshnag. I just gave you a few examples. Goddess Lakshmi, goddess of wealth, sitting on owl. Goddess Saraswati, deity of wisdom and learning, on the swan. Lord Ganesh with a mouse. I think this symbolism is very important. You have to live in harmony. When that happens, India's tiger population has recorded the global high recently because Safe Tiger campaign, it is important for the forest, it is important for environment. My take, ladies and gentlemen, is very straight and simple. What is sacred is sustainable. I'm not talking of spiritual sacredness. What I mean by sacred is something which is an object of reverence, an object of respect. And when you have that kind of a sacred character, sustainable emerges as a consequence. This kind of practice has been globally followed. In fact, I'm tempted to quote what my esteemed Prime Minister mentioned at the Mission Life in Glasgow. I think this can capture the essence of sustainable and equitable development. It is in Sanskrit, and this is translation I will read. Pibanti nadya swayameva nabham swayam na khadanti phadani vriksha nadanti sayam khalu varivaha paropkaraye sata vibhuta. What does it mean? Neither river drinks their own water, nor trees eat their own fruits. Clouds also don't consume grains produced by their water. Nature provides for us, we must provide for nature. That is the essence of this thought. I'm very happy to tell you today that among promotion of non-renewable energy, India is in the top global countries 5 today. It's a matter of great assurance. Prime Minister has already committed net zero by 2070, and the roadmap is already there. There is a mission life. How do we concretize this is the larger question. And there are 2 issues which I would like to flag here. I think this is the forum format. One is the model which the South followed. Namely, and pardon me for being a little frank, exploit the nature to the maximum to ensure development, improve the quality of the life of the people they seek to govern. Good luck. I'm very clear that if world has to develop, people must become self-reliant, people must have the opportunity to have all the fullest mean of a good, contented life. And let's not forget, poverty is one of the biggest polluters also. But if a logic is given that South has developed, others cannot, it is not sustainable. And this debate is hardly articulated. And if you want to have a sustainable, equitable development, all the countries of life have got the right to live with dignity and opportunity. What the global discourse is doing on this course, this roadmap, there is a big gap which I think Mr. Moore and Sanjeev and all the delegates here need to reflect upon. They have to go hand in hand. The second issue which I would like to flag is the world sharing the best practices of sustainability which the different parts of the world are following since generations? Does the world know about it? Is there any movement coordinated to enable the world to at least reflect upon these other practices? In India, this whole Ramaseer movement, wetland development, has become a big movement. On the 75th year of India's independence, Amrit Kal, 75 big ponds would be erected. Nearly 70% have been completed. This water body management. Small communities in the hinterland of India and in many parts of the world are doing it. Can these be replicated? Then it will become sustainable and one of involvement. I am very clear about it. Mr. Sanjeev Suri, I have my respect for your company because you are a real Indian company, made a global brand. Today I have to make a request to you. How can we get rid of this whole tissue business, napkin business? Good. It is very quick. But it is coming at a cost to the environment, isn't it? Can we find and innovate some different solutions so that in all your hotel at least you have an alternative to napkins and tissue papers so that people learn to also enjoy that? I'm sorry to say this is complete Western culture which has pervaded the entire globe. Maybe for right or wrong, I'm not being judgmental. But it's coming for a cost. Coming with a cost to the environment. What are the other two issues? I'm very happy that G20 this year has fixed the theme of one planet, one life, one mission, something like that. Let G20, this particular theme, become the springboard for this larger narrative. But ladies and gentlemen, I am very clear. I have been an activist from my student life, and I have one view which is very clear. If something remains on the discussion board, it is never going to become sustainable. I'm not going to start recounting what happened in Stockholm and others. But if something is to become sustainable, it must migrate from discussion table to every family's dinner table. Then it becomes a kind of a commitment all of us have to do. And there are examples. Clean India campaign, Swachh Bharat. I can tell you, the year was 2014, there was a minister, communication, IT, law, justice. And the Prime Minister one day say, in his style, I'll say in Hindi and then translate in English, मैं भी झाड़ू लगाने जा रहा हूँ, तुम लोग भी झाड़ू लगाओगे. Of sitting in the Union Cabinet, the Prime Minister saying, I'm going to have a broom in my hand and going to Kashi to clean the bylanes, and all of you do. Was something Latin for us. But we know the sixth sense of the Prime Minister. My duty was assigned Patna Junction. All my MLAs were there and all the platform was looking spick and span. Then I went to the post office because I was Minister of Communication also. I entered it. I asked him, everything all right? Sir, see. Then I took the stool, went over the Almirah, and put down all the files, and all the dirt started coming in. Okay, what is this? Ladies and gentlemen, what message the Prime Minister sent? He, holding a broom in his hand, led to a great movement. Every resident welfare society, companies, their employees, their MDs came out and took the mission of cleanliness as a part of their larger commitment. It became a movement. Clean toilet, 11 crores have been added. Therefore, sustainability has to become a part of daily life and a part of the movement. There, the Indian experience can teach a lot if those who are spreading this movement are willing to do so. Mr. Puri talked about digital India. In the direction of the Prime Minister, I had the privilege to do so, and the results we are noticing today. In the year 2014, when Narendra Modi was campaigning for getting the people's support, he coined an expression. If I am elected as the Prime Minister, I would like to create an India where IT plus IT is equal to IT. IT, information technology, plus IT, India's talent, is equal to IT India tomorrow. I never expected that he will give this massive responsibility on my shoulders as an IT and communication minister. Then the question arose, how we define digital India? And lots of great minds gave it a lot of energetic but technological solutions. I said, nothing doing. Put it in simple words. Digital India is designed to empower ordinary Indians with the power of technology, number one. Number two, bridge the digital divide between digital haves and digital have-nots. And number three, bring in digital inclusion. Everyone must participate. And ladies and gentlemen, what is the upshot today? India's massive success in delivery of services to millions and millions of bank accounts of the poor. At a click of a button, they get all the entitlement welfare measure in their bank accounts. The corona came, I was looking after that. 2,000 million doses, 200 crores, ultimately were conveyed on a mobile phone. You will get this dose, the first dose, at this place on this date. We could leverage the mobile as to how it could be done. Digital teaching, digital justice delivery. India's UPI payment, one of the biggest in the world. The world is seeking for that. And it is non-polluting. Be very clear about it. What is important is if there is a commitment and the people understand the positive side of it. India has become one of the biggest market for smartphones for my friends from abroad. And whenever I go to the hinterland of India, the biggest assurance comes to me, Ki Ravi uncle, we are also doing Googling. We also operate search engines. That is the empowerment which has happened. This happens if inclusion is the buzzword. The common people come to have a stake. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I have spoken enough, except to say that these discussions in five-star hotel are fine. How do we bring it on the ground and make it a part of the mass movement? And they are the government, the policy makers, the corporate sectors, the NGOs, all have to play a role. India has become the biggest producer of ethanol blending because we came with the policy. All other sustainable goals, I did not go there. We are committed and we are doing our best. I think this larger narrative of balance, we have got the right to exist with dignity. But I have also got the right to strike a balance and harmony between development and sustainability. If that theme is there, I think it is not far, but I am very clear that this world has to have real, equitable, sustainable development. It can only be if the leg up also comes from the traditional view of traditional old society as to how they have created harmony and balance. The success of yoga is the biggest example for that. Thank you. Good luck. Keep it up.
Thank you, sir, for your very insightful and interesting remarks. I now invite Ms. Seema Arora for her closing remarks.
Thank you. Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad ji, Mr. Sanjeev Puri, John Moore, all the distinguished participants and speakers, thank you very much for being here today. And I think we've had a phenomenal start for our 18th Sustainability Summit, and I need to just thank the distinguished panelists led by our chief guest, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad ji, for giving us such a beautiful definition of sustainability, balance and harmony. And I think this is a key takeaway for us today, this morning, that how do we actually bring this into the work that we are doing and bring it to the action on the ground. So I just want to give one example of how as CII and the Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development in the past 5 years, and just one example, many examples are there, we worked with the farmers on the ground, sir, in 350 villages in Punjab and Haryana, with the help of our member companies who have provided the solutions, the technologies, to help them not burn the residue of straw of rice that they burn, and nearly 90% of them actually converted to non-burning practices and brought back that balance and harmony that you talked about, and also prevented the air from getting polluted, a lot of carbon sequestration. We believe we need to do more, but this is also something that CII does, besides also doing a lot of best practice sharing. I want to thank Mr. John Moore for giving a very good, understanding of how we can do step by step, the vision, the plan, and all of the other things that you said, Mr. Moore. And India definitely has a plan, has a vision that is amply demonstrated, but yes, we need to put the action on the ground much more. Thank you, Mr. Puri, and I think he has, as the ITC Chairman and Managing Director, but more importantly, as a leader in CII and leading the CII-ITC Center, demonstrated that how businesses can actually create opportunity and value by embedding sustainability. And I want to thank you for your leadership of this center and the other work of CII. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we end the inaugural session. Please join me in applauding the panel and thanking them for their time this morning. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. With this, we conclude the inaugural session of the 18th Sustainability Summit. We thank our distinguished dignitaries on the dais for their time, presence, and thoughtful comments.